Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to talk about the beachhead strategy. So, most of our past episodes, we've been talking about the thesis shipping strategy, where you're going to iteratively replace the system you have with the same system by fixing things and replacing things and evolving it over time. And the core concept there is that you would never have two of the same systems, right? You would never do this total rewrite idea, and you would never have two systems that are supposed to do the same thing with a cutover.
Mm-hmm.
The beachhead strategy is a very specific way that you can say, okay, I do want two systems. And there is a you have to be very, very specific about how and why you're going to do it, but it can be a very powerful thing to do as an alternative to a rewrite. So the first thing that, like the name implies, the beachhead, you're trying to establish a foothold. And it's when you have a system that has become a Swiss Army knife of features. The example that you and I years ago worked together on a system that sent emails, and it had a million features. And so it had a million branching code paths that would branch and code, come back, and all these things. And because of that, it was fairly slow because it had to do check for this, check for that, check for this, check for that.
Right.
And you proposed what I'm going to call now a beachhead of, hey, what if for this one specific email type we know doesn't need any of these other features? So we come up with a code path or an alternative, and it doesn't even check. Doesn't go down any of these branching code paths, turn them off, or make a new function. And so the idea is we are going to extract one very specific scenario, and we don't have to worry about all the edge cases that bog down a rewrite because we aren't going to handle them. We are saying, oh, here is the one scenario, and there are no edge cases because that's how we're defining it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we get this one scenario out and we get it to production, then in an improved way, it will provide enough value to be worth it, even if we do nothing else. And that's the beachhead. So instead of a full rewrite where we have to encounter every possible code path and all the edge cases, which is where things go to die.
Yeah.
You say, no, I'm only covering this one scenario.
Right. And at the time, it almost felt like increasing the tech debt, right? Because it's like there's more conditionals in the code. You haven't really refactored so much as to add like instead of going down this path that's super intensive and very slow because we're trying to apply all the kinds of nested functions and nested functions on this data. If we know we don't need all those nested functions and we can do an alternative, let's just go to the right instead. So the concept was almost like a fast lane on a highway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have like fast lane, if you qualify for it, you can really get there a lot faster, whereas the rest of the folks still go on the right hand side.
Right, and it's got limitations, right? If you're in the fast lane, you don't get as many exits. But if you know that, so you don't have two full systems going, but you have your general system, and then you have a very specific implementation that is much less feature rich. And that's kind of one of the keys there is it must be much less feature rich, and it must serve a very specific customer oriented goal. In this case, it could send emails a lot faster because the emails were simple and we knew it. We knew it in advance. These are going to be simple emails, right? Turn off all the checks and just shoot as fast as possible.
So I guess another way of thinking about it is another way of rephrasing what you've said is instead of refactoring everything for a piece of code or for a feature that is customer facing, if you can identify a segment or a large segment of customers that would benefit from a small change to your feature, you can target that segment instead and solve the problem for that piece of users without having to spend all of the time completely rebuilding the entire feature.
Right, because part of the requirement is this new thing goes into production immediately. Right, you never have a thing that you're building over a new system that you're building over here. You have a piece of a new system, just the fast lane piece. if you're going to go with the highway fast lane metaphor, you already have a highway. It already has bridges. It has right of way. It has, it's been leveled and graded. Adding another lane that is the fast lane is much less difficult than saying I'm going to build a new highway next to this one, and then I
Right.
will move over. If you want to do that, right? So if you have identified, hey, I have this possibility, and what brought me to thinking about this is I'm examining a case in my current work where I've got a similar possibility of data importing, but for onboarding customers. And so in this case, we have a very rich data importing system.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm onboarding a customer, I know they don't have any history. And so I could turn off most of the checks and balances, or I think I could turn off. I haven't actually tried it yet.
Gotcha.
The theory is the thing that reminded me of this pattern that you and I found, well, I guess it's a strategy, is here's a very specific scenario. It's a new customer.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's a new customer, I know they don't have history. And because they don't have history, I don't need to worry about any of those checks. And so what would I do to make things faster? And the first thing in my head is, oh, well, can I actually identify that somebody's a new customer and that this is their initial data import, and so that I don't have to check things?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the first thing, is actually find out, can I make a fast lane? Cool, I can, or I think I can. And the second thing that I would do would be to simply mark where I could, where in the flow I could
Segment.
apply the changes. Like, where would the entrances and exits to my highway fast lane be?
Mm-hmm.
And then once I've got some of the entrances and exits marked, and this is where I'm going to start thesis shipping again, is I don't need to change everything. If I could change one, we'll go with the highway again. If I could create a fast lane between these two exits, for just this one section of road, then I would be able to time it and see how much faster it is. And then I'd be able to have some kind of idea of, is this even worthwhile? Is it worth continuing?
Right.
And so instead of having, a whole, here's the regular system and then here's the fast lane, it's, oh, here's the regular system and here I'm going to have this, it's a fork and branch thing. And I would slowly pull out further and further, more and more of the parallel path. And over time, that would get me a fast lane in my beachhead. And if that's good, I could then start importing more features into the fast lane.
Yeah.
And
So I was about to suggest something like that because the fast line could become eventually the main lane if it serves
mm-hmm,
90% of your base. And while you make that new fork, you could probably easily test that because it's brand new functionality. Wrap that with tests. It serves a really good purpose. Then that helps you do the thing we talked about earlier where you're like you learn more of the system so you know which features exist as you're trying to port them over, then you can test them one by one.
mm-hmm, right. This is you are doing you hopefully will end up doing a full rewrite, but because you've started with the beachhead, you have something in production that is useful to your current customers, right? You have something that is in production that is useful and valuable to customers. And now you can cut over or expand the feature set over time as it's valuable. And
I'd say
eventually
almost it's almost not maybe a full rewrite in this case because I think a lot of times when we think about full rewrites, we're thinking about a brand new repo,
mm-hmm,
potentially in a brand new language that's like more modern. Whereas this one's more like it's the same repo, it's the same language, it's a new functionality within that current system. So it's like there's another word for this we have to use, I suppose, so we don't confuse the listener.
you could call it a fork, but I'm not sure that it has to be. It depends on how your system is designed.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've got a service-oriented architecture, then you don't necessarily, the cutovers, the on lane and off lanes,
Mm-hmm.
those could be calls to external services, and you could be switching between them. So if you have a service-oriented architecture and you're going to import your customer's data, it's possible that, hey, in the original version with this import, let's say, I
Mm-hmm.
need to say, here's a bunch of data, find me the diffs. Okay, now I need to apply the diffs so that it works correctly. And then in the fast lane, where I'm saying this is a new customer, there's no current data, I can skip that entire call and just apply everything.
Right.
In the case of this thing, because I know I don't need to apply diffs, I could just go straight to insert this data, which would be it would be entirely different setup of how I'm going to do my SQL. And so it would be, if I had a service-oriented architecture, in this case I don't, those would be different callouts, different, there could be different services, a straight through insert this if it's valid versus a diff this and then insert the changes. So I guess the next thing is, okay, so we've talked about when it's a good idea. Let's talk about when it's a bad idea, right? So if you can't put it into production immediately, it's a bad idea. Well, it's not a good idea for that. It's not a good use case, right? So if you've got hey, I just want to deal with, I've got some edge cases, but I'm going to deal with customers that are like this, but I need to rewrite I want to write a whole new framework on a whole new system, so it's going to take me 6 months. Then it's not a beachhead. If you're not stripping things out, right? If you're not saying, oh, I could strip down what we currently have and smooth the pathway, even if I'm rewriting it, so that it's simple, and simple will make it fast. It's not this isn't the right pattern for you or strategy for you, because it's not. The whole idea is you have very good understanding of the problem domain,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't need to know about the 1,000,001 edge cases that cause the whole thing to be crufty, because you have specifically designed not to have it.
I guess the different differentiator there is like, let's say you have identified a segment of the population that would qualify for something that would make things faster for them or make your throughput faster for them, and you've ported things over. So what remains on the other side after you've ported over the main functionality that serves a fairly large size segment are
Mm-hmm.
those edge cases you're talking about. So essentially you've left others in the slow lane because those are the complicated people.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that need all the bells and whistles and all the checks for this and that and the other and personalization and all this kind of thing. Um, so it's an interesting concept to split them, because it kind of helps you reflect. You can kind of see how your original feature that you built was meant to serve all populations,
Mm-hmm.
but as your company has grown, you can see like an unfair balance of slowdown for all the people who don't need this particular slowdown. So splitting it apart is like almost a really good thought exercise to kind of reevaluate what your product's doing. So it really does help you, like you're saying here, you need a really good understanding of your system to be able to do
Mm-hmm.
this. This is something that kind of has to come. This approach has to come after a product has somewhat matured, it seems.
Yeah, for sure. I was trying to think of some real life examples. One that I came up with was TurboTax works really well if you're an employee, like if you're in the US and you're an employee of a company and you get a W-2 and you don't have any investments and you just have that's your only income, you could use TurboTax and it's really fast and it's pretty cheap, much cheaper than an accountant,
Right.
and it's fast. And if you've got, if you're self-employed or you've got 2 or 3 side jobs or you've got investments or real estate, you probably want to hire an accountant, and it's going to be slower, it's more expensive, but it's more complex. And so TurboTax is look, we're going to handle the simple case. And I think that they have expanded over the years.
Right.
But in the beginning, they handled the simple case of, look, we're just going to handle W-2 employees who don't have any side things, and we're going to do a good job for that. And that, is faster and cheaper.
And it covers so many people. Like
Right. It
most
covers,
people are not, throwing a ton of stuff in the stock market or have 3 businesses to manage.
right. It covers probably 60% of the American population. All right. We seem to have run out of steam, so maybe this is where we leave it.
All right, so let's do a quick summary then.
Okay.
How are you defining? Let's get a good definition of this beachhead
The
strategy.
beachhead strategy. The beachhead strategy is, instead of thesis shipping, instead of iteratively improving and trying to make your thing better, you are going to create a stripped down version of your product that only handles a single use case. And so it doesn't have to deal with the edge cases. And that will allow you to create something much better than, or much faster and much more scalable, better in some definition that you have version for a significant percentage of your customers, and then you can improve it over time.
And this is most useful, it seems, for companies that have a particular feature that is already somewhat mature, and then maybe is going through some kind of squeeze from data or a traffic or a volume perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and for folks who know their system very well, and they can go, oh well, we we see that most people don't need all these bells and whistles. Let's ship them over here, and that way their experience is a little bit faster.
Yes, very good call. Yeah, it's for mature products that have become feature rich, where you can identify a significant subset of your customers who don't need any of those features.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.